welcome in everybody, whether you're on the East Coast, West Coast, or around the world. This is Coast to Coast. And of course, we have our standard guys here today. How's everybody doing?
I'm doing okay. How are you?
Good, good. So you got your travel plans you're working through?
Well, this is for a couple of weeks from now. I have to go on Friday. Friday, it'd be an interesting day because I was going to call you literally from the road
Okay.
as I am driving to Cincinnati.
Okay.
So we're going to try to see if
Hey.
the Wi-Fi can make it.
Well, whose Wi-Fi is out there? We can pretty much just let you know.
Well, it's the Wi-Fi or like just the 5G. Let's see how well T-Mobile works.
I mean, that'll probably be okay. If we had to rely on the
It's gonna be better than Comcast.
If we had to rely on the X, that'd be the problem, right? Xfinity, Comcast, Viacom, whatever you want to call them. It's hot trash.
All of it is hot trash. I guess
that's right. But T-Mobile actually generally does fairly well. How's it going, Wayne? What's up, Joe?
So might as well get right to it. How about Minnesota saying, you know what? Our quarterback sucks. Let's go after a real quarterback.
And go.
I mean, as a Viking fan that did not expect much out of the team this year anyways, you understand it from a thought process because they did say all offseason long they were trying to get Matthew Stafford. So it's not nothing new that they've tried to get Matthew Stafford basically since the start of the offseason. But now you ended up bringing in Sam Darnold, who was a top 3 pick 6 years ago, and he's finally living up to his top 3 abilities. And now you have a team that a lot of people thought would win 5, maybe 6 games this year, sitting at 5-1 right now. And you're doing it behind Sam Darnold, who's finally playing the part of basically an NFL caliber quarterback who can lead his team to a playoffs.
See, I don't know why you're mad because if you're looking at it, they wanted Darnold to win 5 games. He's won 5. Time to move on.
Well, from their perspective, I can understand like this could be like that situation where we're in win now mode right now, where we want to go and get a guy like Stafford who has been in this situation before. When the Rams went and traded for Matthew Stafford, they were in win now mode. They basically gave up everything they could possibly give up to get him in Los Angeles. They ended up winning the ring, and it cost them because of it, because they haven't had much draft picks since that Super Bowl to kind of replenish that team. So in hindsight, like, yes, Minnesota might be in win now mode knowing the kind of start that they got off to, but they cannot afford to do what the Rams did to get Stafford. Like, they can't afford to mortgage their entire future to get this guy here. Now, if you're going to send them Sam Darnold and 1 or 2 picks on the process, that's fine. But we cannot be sending them 5, 6, 7 draft picks that are going to potentially mortgage our future down the road if you're going to make this deal.
Oh, they're not going to do that.
And how quickly could he be even ready to play on a Minnesota team?
Realistically, he plays this week against Minnesota because they play tomorrow. So obviously that trade is not going to happen today or tomorrow because they play each other tomorrow on Thursday. It would not shock me at all if this trade happens, where it happens Friday morning after the game is over, or potentially even after the game is done Thursday night, since both teams are there. And with Kevin O'Connell being a Sean McVay guy, his offensive coordinator, Wes Phillips, being a Sean McVay guy, they practically run a very similar system. So Minnesota has that extended week off, or the extended 3 days off with the Thursday night game. Stafford would probably be ready in 1 week.
So if you're Stafford, right, and you're playing them, and you're going to end up being on that team next week, do you just sandbag this thing so that you have a better record when you get there?
Honestly, that would be hilarious.
That would be amazing.
But I think Stafford's professional enough where he wouldn't do that, knowing the amount of shit that he had to go through when he was in Detroit for as long as he was in Detroit.
But
like, and like this theoretically would probably be the best team top to bottom that Stafford has ever been on if he got traded. Because even when he was in Detroit, he always had Kelvin Johnson, he always had weapons, but he never had a consistent defense in Detroit, and he never had a consistent running game.
I mean, to be fair, the team he won with the Rams was stacked.
They were stacked, but they They were stacked, but they had Todd Gurley, who was still like Todd Gurley before his knees basically decided they didn't want to work anymore. But he didn't have Nakua back then. He didn't have. Did he have Cooper Kupp in the Super Bowl? I think that was it was Cooper Kupp.
Yeah, he also had OBJ. And OBJ had a huge game.
Yeah.
So I mean, like that was a stacked team because they gave up everything to bring all those people in. That's why nobody could stay. They couldn't afford that team. But I wouldn't say that this Vikings team is the best one he's played for. The Rams, that Rams Super Bowl team is the best one he played for.
I mean, with everyone being locked up though for the next 3-4 years after this, it's a situation where if the Vikings wanted to go the route where the Packers do, where they sit their rookie quarterbacks for 3 years before they put them in there, you could essentially bring Stafford back for 2 more years with this exact same roster that's in place right now, basically. And that's kind of where the continuity thing would play into factor. But
so that's where this team would be better than the Rams. Yeah. Because for one season, the Rams.
Yeah, and then they pretty much started losing everybody.
But you can run this Vikings team back, whereas the Rams couldn't run it back.
That's kind of why I think if they make this trade, I don't think it's just a 2-month rental at this point. I think it would be a this year plus next year to let McCarthy sit one additional year, learn behind Darnold this year, but then also learn behind Stafford, who's won a Super Bowl in the past. Sure. And then by year 3, they turn it over. But in terms of
how bummed out are you if you're Darnold and this happens? Right?
I don't know if he's necessarily bummed out because at the same time, given how he's played so far, no one expected him to play at this level, and no one's going to expect him to play at this level the rest of the year. He's going to get paid this offseason. He's going to get a multi-year contract with somebody, and he knows damn well it wasn't going to be
as you go from the Jets, dumpster fire, no help, right? You go to the Panthers, they get rid of the guys that were good on that team.
Mm-hmm.
Garbage franchise. You get one start with the Niners, right?
One start in like 3 games of relief when they were up by a lot, but yeah.
Yeah. So then you go here, you finally have a good team around you. You're finally playing well. And then you get traded to go to a Rams team that now looks like they're kind of going to dismantle this thing.
Well, here's
Kupp is on the trade block.
Well, here's the flip side of that too, though. If you're Darnold and he ends up getting traded to Los Angeles, let's just say he plays fairly decent with Los Angeles. Obviously not at the level of Minnesota because he doesn't have the same pieces. But you still have Kyron Williams locked up for another couple of years. Puka Nacua, I think, got 3 years left on his rookie deal. And if Cooper Kupp isn't traded, Darnold would have 3 good options next year if the Rams wanted to turn around and sign him to a multi-year deal, being that he's only 27 years old. So it could be a win-win for both quarterbacks in that situation where Darnold could get a multi-year deal with the Rams.
Yeah, but if you're the Rams, you don't even need him because, I mean, if you wanted that younger guy, they still have Stetson Bennett on the roster.
Yeah, but do they trust Stetson Bennett? Because they brought in Jimmy Garoppolo, so that...
Well, they needed it. So bringing in Jimmy G made sense because Stafford has an injury history as of late in his career. So you kind of have to, in the back of your mind, plan for a backup situation. You have your, drafted guy that is now back from, his leave from the NFL. And you didn't know exactly how that was going to pan out either. So you needed a guy like Jimmy G, not necessarily Jimmy G directly, but a guy like that, because you didn't know if the rookie was really going to return. Mm-hmm. Right. You can't bank on Stafford staying healthy. You have a team.
That's my concern too.
Yeah. So, I mean, even if they did bring in Darnold, you would still have those other guys. I just don't know if you're going to mess with signing him to a multi-year deal. Why? Because you have this rookie that is free and nobody's going to be great around this team, especially if you get rid of Kupp. So you're going to have Nacua, who might return this year. And then what? Like most of your team is getting decimated. So, I mean, I don't know.
I'm on the fence. I'm on the fence.
What's that?
I'm on the fence about the trade because I actually did want this trade to happen last year when Kirk Cousins went down. and Vikings were in the market for a quarterback last year. So I was all for this trade to happen last year just because I knew Stafford still had this year under his contract plus the option year after that, where I'm like, you go trade for him last year. Obviously, you're not going to get rid of him next year, but then if it works out, you still have him for an additional 2 years. But just kind of given how Darnold has played this year and just the chemistry that he's built up with some of these players now, that's kind of where I'm like, I don't know if I want to ruin that potentially, where if Stafford comes in and doesn't click right away for 2-3 games, are you potentially throwing away a couple of those games where if you would have had Darnold, you might have just had that chemistry and just kept things rolling?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the Vikings are going to, Mets it up.
Pretty much.
Hey, if they want to send us Cooper Kupp and Matthew Stafford,
They are not doing that.
then I would be then I'd be like, give up whoever you want to give up besides Justin Jefferson.
So would you give up a first this year, a second next year? Actually, a second that could go up to a first, and the quarterback?
For Stafford and Kupp together, I would give up Darnold, a first and a second and a fifth, and then maybe like a Jalen Naylor.
Well, no, that second
Yeah,
would be that goes up to number one.
Yeah.
So and the number one goes that if you guys get to the NFC Championship game, not even a Super Bowl, I wouldn't even give it that whole.
And then I would do 3 picks and I would give him Darnold and throw in Jalen Naylor. If I could get Cooper Kupp and Stafford to come to Minnesota, because now your receiving core is going to be Jefferson, Kupp, and Addison, Hawkinson with Stafford as your quarterback, and that would be your offense for the next 2-3 years.
You're not going to trade your quarterback. You're not going to swap quarterbacks. You will get Matthew Stafford, but you are not going to lose Darnold. And there's a reason for that. Because if by chance, Stafford is 38 years old.
Yeah, if he does get hurt, we need that.
He does get hurt. You already have somebody who's there. But now you got somebody who's unhappy because you guys just said, hey, he wasn't good enough by going out and getting a quarterback.
For sure.
You can't trade
just like that in the course of 5 minutes, you're like, I hate this, to, let's do this.
Well, if it gets me Cooper Kupp, it's kind of hard to say no to that trade. But essentially, I would think that you're not keeping both Darnold and Stafford. Even though Stafford does have that injury history, I don't see how Minnesota could feasibly make it work with both of those guys on the same roster, knowing that one's going to be unhappy. Eventually, Darnold, I think, would have to get moved somewhere else later down the road.
Yeah, Joe, this isn't going to be a, let's trade I'm going to trade everybody for the second pick in the draft and pick up Ricky Williams. Yeah, that's what happened there with the Saints. If you remember that a long time ago. I know that you're old, Joe.
Yep.
So.
Well, that one always makes me think of the RG3 action too, where they gave up everything to go get him, and then when they played the Rams, they had all of those draft picks come out as captains. So they had like 8 captains for that game. It was awesome.
I like that type of stuff. That's kind of gamesmanship that I like to see.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then we had another trade that went through this morning, which I think everybody saw coming from a mile away, and I think a lot of people expected this trade to even happen last year.
I'm okay with it because I think he's jumped the shark.
Yeah.
I think he's jumped the shark.
I think he makes an impact there.
I think that you know what I think he does? I think he makes JJ Schuster look better.
JJ Schuster's not gonna be playing for a while.
Well, see, then he's already not going to do so good. Actually, I got Worthy on my fantasy bench.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Because he would be great if he could actually catch a ball more often than not.
Sure.
He's got the problems with the oopsies.
Yeah, I think KC uses him a lot, like Cooper, right? Yeah. So he's going to be that possession guy,
and he does have 1 year left next year. So then you're looking potentially at barring health, Rashee Rice, Hollywood Brown, and Hopkins as your receivers next year with Kelsey.
Yep.
and Hopkins instantly goes down to your number 3 option, which that's a very good number 3 option. Especially for a quarterback that could actually get him the ball.
Yeah, but he's not a slot receiver.
He wouldn't have to be. You could still line him up on the outside and put Hollywood Brown as your slot because Stephon Diggs is technically a slot receiver. But he's a number 1 option on a lot of teams just because of how his route running ability is. Like when Justin Jefferson came into the league, he came into the league as a slot receiver.
Is Worthy the number 1 right now?
No. Worthy is not even considered a number 1 or a number 2. He's realistically kind of like how Percy Harvin was used when he was in Minnesota, where they put him in the backfield, they line him up in the slot, they do jet sweeps, they do like those little touch passes to him just to kind of get him on the run or whatever. He doesn't really have a set role at this point. The number one is still Kelsey, and if Juju Smith-Schuster didn't get hurt, he probably would have been their number 1 option because he had a five reception, 145-yard game 2 weeks ago with 2 scores. Like he probably would have been their number 1 option had he not gotten hurt. But now it's going back to Kelsey is your number 1. Realistically, Kareem Hunt might be the number 1 option right now because he's got 4 touchdowns in 2 weeks.
No, that makes a little bit more sense. I mean, that's why I've kept Worthy on my bench. Because he had a good week, 1 week, week 1, and then I put him on the bench because I thought he would stink, and he has proved me right.
And I'm curious to see how that ends up too. Like once Isaiah Pacheco comes back, how are they going to utilize both him and Kareem Hunt? Because Kareem Hunt is playing extremely well since he came back to Kansas City.
Well, I think that I don't think that's going to be as big a deal as you think.
I don't think it will be either. I could see him using several formations where they're both on the field at the same time.
It's like I think about that with Pacheco was doing it with Edwards-Helaire. It's like Andy Reid likes the running back by committee. He's always been a big fan of the 3-headed monster. That's an Andy Reid staple, and it's been around for a long time. So, because one of the best three-headed monsters he had was when he had Westbrook, Deuce Staley, and Buckhalter.
Mm-hmm.
That was an amazing threesome. Because one had speed, one had hands, and the other one had just pure grit.
That's how the Chiefs had it last year because you had Pacheco was kind of your do everything back where he had the speed, he had the hands, and he had the power. Then you had Jerick McKinnon behind him who was your speed back, and then you had your power back in Helaire.
Right. And really, truth of the matter is that you used him between the 10s. It used to be the 20s. Now it's the 10s. You go all the way up to the 10s. And then you start power backing in from the 10. That was why I was really frustrated when they got rid of I know his first name is Jordan.
Jordan Howard?
He was just a beast. Like that guy would just carry people. And I wonder, like, why don't we want to use him?
Didn't you have him and Joseph Adai the same year?
No.
Or was that the year after that Adai got there?
Ajay came back, but wasn't being used.
Yeah.
Because Howard got hurt. Ajay came back, and they said, why am I here? They're not even using me.
Yep.
And it was a true statement because they weren't using him. And come to find out that it had more to do with the play calling from one Carson Wentz rather than he would change the plays in the huddle rather than go with what was going on, possibility on the field. But he was all upset because Frank went to Indianapolis at that point. That was his buddy. They were religious together.
All right.
It's funny as I say that. It's amazing how much that actually does play in football.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. But so there you go, and there you have it.
So another move that sounds like it's gonna get finalized today is Devin White headed to the Texans.
Okay.
So
From where?
The Bucks, I think, was his last stop.
Devin White's a linebacker.
Correct. Yep.
He's on
Former
the
Eagle.
Eagles.
Yeah.
He's on the Eagles.
Yeah,
Currently.
it sounded like, from what I was reading, it sounded like they're trying to work out a deal where he goes to the Texans.
Yeah, he's currently an Eagle, and he's not playing.
Yeah.
Right? It's like he just has not gotten out of the doghouse of Vic Fangio.
Yeah. Well, and so that's probably why they're looking at trading.
And then
That would help the Texans,
yeah.
provided he gets on the field. But I mean, that'd be a huge pickup for them.
And then the other one that's not official yet, which I think will be official later today, is Michael Thomas is in Tampa Bay working out with the Bucks because they don't have any receivers for the next month.
There's that.
Well, that and I'd be willing to, so the Eagles just let go of he was a Colt. He's played in like a couple of games for us this year, but I think his name's Paris.
Paris Campbell.
Yeah. I have a feeling he's going to wind up in Tampa right now.
Think
Because
so?
they didn't re-sign him to the practice squad. I'd be willing to bet, just because it was unique that they let him go and did not sign anybody to the practice or the main squad. So that kind of told me, like, hey, listen, I think we're going to do you a solid and allow you to go down there. If it don't work out, let us know and we'll put you back on the practice squad.
Yeah.
I think that there's probably some of that occurs. Trading deadline ends on what, Monday or Tuesday? Tuesday, I guess.
I think is it the 29th?
Let me look.
Or is it November 5th? I thought it was November 5th.
Did they did extend it a week, I think.
I think it's November 5th is when the trade deadline is, which would be not this upcoming Tuesday, but the following Tuesday.
Right, because they did extend it a week. I know that.
Yeah.
So, because I'm thinking this is it, week 8.
November 5th.
At what, noon?
It says
right, or
4 p.m.
o'clock?
Eastern, November
4 p.m.
5th.
Yeah, 4 p.m.
And according to the St. Paul Pioneer Press, which is out of obviously Minnesota, Rams and Vikings are actively in talks with Matthew Stafford, and it would be a Stafford-Darnold swap with other players / picks involved.
Now, say randomly it works out for the Vikings and he gets a ring. That is a weird path to winning rings for Stafford.
Yeah.
I mean, it works. Hey, but just talk about a unique way to get there.
Actually, I'll be honest with you. I still don't think Stafford makes that team good enough to beat Detroit in Detroit.
Yeah, I could see that.
That's what you're going after now. I mean, ultimately, that's what I see. I see that the road to the Super Bowl on the NFC side is going to have to go through Detroit.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's what you're doing. Any move that you're doing right now is to try to get above Detroit.
It's not only to try to get above Detroit. I think any move that any of these NFC teams are doing right now is just to put them in a position where they can compete with Detroit.
And I'll tell you, the one surprise that I think is going to come out of this is that if Washington makes it as far as they're possibly projected right now, I was watching Colin Cowherd. He's got them on the bubble of being a Super Bowl contender
Because
this
they're the 3 seed right now, right? Or are they 2? Or are they the 2 seed?
but they're 5-2, right?
Yeah, because Detroit's 5-1. They'd be the 2 seed right now because Detroit's 5-1 as the 1 seed. Seattle's 4-3. They'd be the 3 seed.
No, because Minnesota. Well, I guess because of the
division. Yeah, Washington would be the 2 seed right now in the NFC.
right, because they have a half a game up on us.
Yeah, so Vikings would be the 5 seed. Packers would be the 6 seed. Bears are the 7 seed.
No.
You
The
wouldn't get all
Eagles are
4 teams.
right
No,
now.
Eagles, Eagles, because the Bears had their bye week. Yeah,
So, I mean, ultimately, I think that, yeah, and I am hearing that there was a conversation about the guy in the Raiders, that lineman on the Raiders
Crosby?
with the Eagles.
Oh
Max Crosby and the Eagles.
yeah.
I don't know that the Eagles have enough.
I think they do. It's just a
I
matter of
still-
what do they want to give up.
yeah. It seems like Detroit probably has that inside track for that because they have
Well,
stuff they can give up.
Detroit only has like they have a little bit of stuff to give up, but it's only picks.
Yeah.
So if they were only offered a second and a third round pick, a first round pick, which the Eagles have 2, makes
Yeah.
sense.
Well, I think the Lions can also dangle Jamison Williams though.
You could dangle him all you want, but the guy keeps get cut off the field. Doesn't really matter. I mean, now I know
He'll fit in
that
well
fits
with
the
Oakland, man.
culture. Yeah, but that fits the culture of the Raiders typically. But now the Raiders have a new owner, and I gotta be willing to bet that is going to create a difference in culture right away.
You
Like,
think
right
Brady
away.
has that much swing?
I think so.
I think Tom Brady will be. I think Tom Brady would be smart if anybody does any moves at this point with the Raiders, but at the same time, I think this season might be one of those years where Tom Brady kind of just lets everything happen the way they're going to happen, and then next season when he has that first full season with the Raiders, kind of that first full off season, that's when he kind of starts leaving his stamp on the organization. I think this year might be if you want to trade this person, trade him. Let's get what we can get for him, and we'll start from scratch this offseason.
I hear
Well,
you.
I mean, I think that's why they're getting rid of everybody. Is
Who knows? Maybe Tom Brady will sign a contract to play.
No,
I don't see that being a thing.
he would
But-
have to give up his $35 million cush job now.
Yeah.
That he needs to be able to support the Raiders, because without that $35 million, he wouldn't have enough.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
So.
Yeah. No, it's. I do think he does influence, which would be good because that team is terrible.
They go like once every 5 years, they make a big push.
Mhm.
So, and unfortunately, they have a lot of different guys that they have gotten rid of over the last couple of years. That, if you imagine, on the Raiders kept all those guys. I mean, I think who's the guy that plays for Cleveland that just sacked the Eagles like 3 times in this past game? A couple weeks ago. Myles Garrett. Wasn't he
No.
originally a Raider?
No, he was the number 1 overall pick by Cleveland back in 2012 or 13.
Yeah, I know that they had like guys that were like lineman guys that are like,
Shelby Harris was a Raider. He's on Cleveland right now.
but there was a couple of guys that they had that were linemen that were just,
Oh, they had Khalil Mack.
Khalil Mack.
that's him.
The other reason why I think Crosby to the Lions makes sense is he went to college at Eastern Michigan, like just north of Detroit. So going back to Michigan kind of gives him a little bit of an incentive.
Well, and it's also a team that you have a shot at winning a ring.
Yeah.
I mean, if I was a player and they're like, okay, well, we can send you to these few different places. And it's like, okay, well, if the money is about the same anyway, right? Because my contract is what it is, but where do I want to go? Oh, somewhere that can help me win. Right. Now, obviously it's not all up to him. It's what those teams can offer the team, the Raiders, but at the same time, you have to imagine that they are listening to his wishes a little bit.
What do you go, 2-3, 2-5? That's what I'm saying. Like 2 second-round picks, a third-round pick, and then a 5th-round pick in 2026.
Depending if you're going all picks or if you want to throw in a player with it.
No players.
If you go players,
Why would you want a player if you are the Raiders?
You don't.
That's what I'm talking about. So there's no point in that.
Yeah.
So that's there's nothing that you're going to offer me short of Hutchinson.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like, hey, we're trading
Although
Hutchinson because
you're never going to get that.
right, of course you're not. So, but that's the only thing I could think of. That's the only guy who's really worthwhile. You know, nobody else is going to be happy going there unless
I
you're
would-
trying to remove a contract. And if that's the case, you're throwing in an extra pick for us to take on that wackadoo contract.
Paul Hopkins is with KC. That happened this morning.
I would do a second and a third in this year's draft for Crosby, and then a fourth and like a sixth in next year's.
Yeah, it's not enough. I'm telling you, it's not enough. I know I wouldn't have it as enough, and I don't get paid the big bucks to be a GM.
Yeah, I mean, the Raiders, for what it is they're going to try and give away, they're going to want some big swings. You know, they're going to want maximum capital for it, especially for Crosby. I was really surprised they didn't get more out of Adams.
I think that was more of Adams just wanted out, and they were just like, "Fine, you want to get out? Here you go." Because I mean, you look at how
Only
Devontae,
getting a third out of him just didn't.
yeah,
seem
but
like
you look at how Devontae Adams' attitude has changed the last 2 seasons in like with the Raiders.
Sure.
I think it could have became a situation where if they didn't trade him, he would have became a locker room cancer, and they didn't want to deal with it.
You entice him to come there because his guy is there,
And then you get rid of his
you
guy.
immediately dump his guy. Of
Yeah.
course, the attitude's going to be bad.
That's why I think it was more so like they didn't want to have him become a locker room cancer. It was more so we're just going to get rid of you for what we can. Like, here's our way of saying sorry, we fucked up. We'll send you to your other friend.
Yeah, I think they could have got more out of the Jets still, though. I mean,
They probably
trading
could have.
seventh and then getting a third, that just wasn't really enough for.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like you definitely could have got more without trying that hard, even if it was late round stuff. Like,
Yeah.
even if it was like, you know, you did the third and the 6 and 7 swap, and then be like, hey, we also want an additional 7th or whatever. I mean, like, I feel like they could have gotten more for that caliber of player, but you know.
And then
Wow.
the Bears have reached out to Cleveland for Myles Garrett this morning.
Yeah, I mean, Garrett's supposed to be on the trade block, or available anyway.
Mhm.
So they're entertaining offers, I believe was the actual.
Yeah, but Chicago doesn't have a first round pick, does they? Do
They have a first round pick. They have their actual first round pick next year. They don't have Carolina's.
Yeah,
That's what next year's, right?
Yeah, so they have Carolina's second round pick for the 2025 draft yet, but they have their actual first round pick. So they still have an extra pick from Carolina that's in the second round next year.
I don't think a second's enough for Garrett.
No, I don't think a second is either, but you could use that Carolina. You could use your own second round pick, package it, and still have your second round pick that you still have from Carolina. So you want to essentially be losing both your second round picks.
Oh, so like if you gave up a first and a second.
Yeah, you could still keep one of your second round picks.
Yeah, I don't know that you want to give up a first round pick for him either. At least not in this year's draft. You're going to need a different wide receiver to help you with your quarterback, or you need to start playing the game of let's start to shore up the offensive line.
It's called Joe Thomas.
Huh?
That's called Joe Thomas. I'm pretty sure the guy's been retired for 7 years now, but he could probably suit up and play better than that entire offensive line.
Yeah, right. Paul, they actually can't go after Riddick. He signed his deal with the Jets, so he's a Jet the rest of the year.
Yeah, and then they released him from the rest of his contract and said,
Right.
You know what? All those fines, we're just going to pay you. You come back and play for us this year, and then the contract's over, and you can go wherever the frig you want to.
Exactly.
But we're not going to lose our second round pick for you.
Speaking of the Browns, though, it only took 1.5 pathetic quarters from DTR for them to name Jameson Winston as a starter this weekend.
I don't think 2 seconds would be enough for them to give up Garrett. I mean, maybe, but I wouldn't think so.
No, I think you need a first and a second.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that you have to give up your first round pick this year. Because let's see, if you are Cleveland, are you going after a quarterback?
I mean, you almost have to.
Well,
Do
here's you almost have to, but at the same time, can they? Knowing what Deshaun Watson's contract is, and knowing how much money he's guaranteed to have, can you actually go after quarterback? Because you get one, you still have to pay Watson. So you're gonna set Watson on your bench and not play him and still have to pay him?
I mean, they better.
They better, but it's
His
Cleveland.
gameplay has been atrocious.
I mean, it is Cleveland though. They're not known for making smart decisions.
Well, you also got to wonder how much drive does Watson actually have to get back on the field? Does he even care? I mean, I understand that, Winston and Garrett were like, he's our guy and his work ethic and all of this, and sure, whatever. But none of that's translated on the field if it's real, right? I mean, so if you're the Browns, like at some point you gotta move on. I mean, you're paying him regardless. So do you want to win or not?
So, Paul, just to give you an idea, because what you're saying here still doesn't make sense for the two for Max Crosby or for Myles Garrett. You got to think of Myles Garrett and Max Crosby. If you were going to assign them a number, that number would probably be in the neighborhood of about 18. And if you went backwards on picks, so number 1 pick is 7 points, 2 is 6, 3 is 5. You got to think about how you're going to get to that number. And that's why that's why it's really hard here, because unless the Eagles I think they have 2 picks this year, and I think that second pick is going to be I guess a mid to late round, because I think that comes from the Saints. So I mean, I guess it could be earlier, but ultimately they unless you are in the top 15, that's where that first round pick could turn to an 8. So then you could say, okay, we're going to give that first round pick, which is worth 8 points, and then you got to acquire the other 9 points somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
That's really the best way to start to look at trades. When you think of a second, and a third, it sounds like that makes sense, but it doesn't really, because it's like, okay, 6, 12, 17. All right, we're still only 1 short. We could throw in like that 7th round pick or a 6th round pick to kind of sweeten that deal.
Especially for the late second.
And you have to look at it too, like trading for Garrett or Crosby isn't just like you're trading for a rental player. You're trading for a possible franchise altering player on your defense, depending on the production they can give you. Like, you're literally trading for guys that are going to give you 10, 12, 15 sacks a season. Myles Garrett's constantly in the defensive player of the year talks. Like, Crosby's constantly one of the highest rated defensive tackles in the NFL. Like, this isn't just a trade to make a trade. You're literally trading for a franchise altering player. It's going to cost you a lot to get a franchise altering player.
Well, and this is why this can't happen. Dallas just didn't have the money. Like they effectively bankrupted themselves.
No,
so
the only way what he's talking could happen is if they do not plan to bring back Micah Parsons, because all that money that Micah Parsons would be getting is going to have to go to Myles Garrett or Crosby.
No, and that's the thing, is it like that doesn't
really make any sense.
Franchise.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
I mean, you're just moving a amazing player out for a different amazing player. I mean,
honestly, Parsons is better than both of them. And Parsons is better than both of them, so you're essentially making your team worse at that point.
And Max Crosby, is he a defensive end or is he a linebacker?
He's a defensive end who also plays defensive tackle, depending on the scheme that they play on defense. He's considered a defensive lineman. He doesn't actually have like the DE or the D tackle like next to his name.
Myles Garrett, same situation. He's defensive end.
He's an edge. Yeah, they moved him to an edge because he was that smaller defensive lineman. When he was drafted, he was like 268, 270 when he was drafted. He was realistically because you never used to have that edge position. It was always like defensive end, defensive tackle, and linebackers. Myles Garrett was the very first player drafted that was listed as an edge. And since then, now you have like all these edge rushers who are too big to be considered linebackers, too small to be considered linemen, but they're that hybrid player that just gets after the quarterback and blitzes. So now they're just called the edge rusher.
Yeah, or they just don't have the designation and it's just D-line.
So yeah, Myles Garrett's the edge, and Crosby is considered a defensive lineman just because he moves from defensive end to defensive tackle, depending on how the Raiders want to do things on defense.
The hardest part about that, so if they were going, if the Eagles were going to trade for that, I would have to say that they would have to give up a similar player, and that would be Jordan Davis. Jordan Davis would wind that you send him out that way, and then also give up a second round and a fourth round. That's how I look at that, because Jordan Davis he's in his second or third year. I understand that he hasn't been the greatest, but he's actually, that defense has been playing pretty well. And when the defense is playing poorly, obviously there's a lot to be said for that, on his side as well. But when they're playing well, he's part of that process too. So I don't know. I can't see, because we play a three down lineman.
Mm-hmm.
We don't play 4. So I don't know. And then moving Myles into a linebacker position. So no way are they going to be able to get rid of Bryce Huff. I hear you, Angel. I would love to be able to get rid of him. No way. No way anybody's going to take that.
Yeah.
Plus, he's starting to come on now. Like, he's starting to actually figure it out a little bit. So I don't think that he's going to be, by the end of this season, he's going to be more worth it than we have seen up to this point. But because
11 minutes ago, Bo, your Seahawks just made a trade.
Oh, who'd we get?
Titans traded linebacker Ernest Jones to the Seahawks for linebacker Jerome Baker and a 4th-round pick.
Okay.
I think Ernest Jones is one of the higher rated linebackers when it comes to coverage.
No. I mean, like it's all right. Like it's not.
You ain't winning the Super Bowl now because of that trade.
No.
Exactly, right? Like, I mean, like it's decent, right? Like it's measurably better, I guess, but not. It doesn't change the way you feel about this defense.
In essence, he's saying it doesn't move his needle.
Very little. It gives it a twinge. It's like almost. Yeah. Okay. I did not need Cup, Steve-O. We are just fine in the receiver department.
Yeah, has Tyler Lockett played yet?
Yeah.
Okay. I haven't seen like much of Tyler Lockett this year. That's why I was wondering.
Yeah, no. I mean, when you look at the receiving core for Seattle, right? You got DK, you got Lockett, you got JSN, and then Bobo as a 4th option is fantastic.
Yeah.
And I mean, so they don't need another receiver. Obviously, is Cup better than our 4th option? Sure. Okay. But I mean, that again doesn't necessarily make your team better. Now, if you would have thrown a offensive lineman there, I might have been excited, right? It's like, oh, okay, somebody that can protect Geno, that'd be fantastic. Let's do some of that.
Think about any offensive lineman right now who could possibly be on a trading block. Think about teams that would get rid of offensive linemen right now, because I tell you, those guys don't grow on trees.
They sure don't.
So, anybody who's worth an offense, unfortunately, you don't trade for offensive linemen. You've picked them up in free agency. That's correct. There's no trading of an offensive lineman in the middle of the season. You're just not going to do it. Unless you're trying to talk, Jason Kelsey into coming back into football.
Or unless you're the Bears and you're trying to literally get rid of Nate Davis for nothing at this point because they don't want to play him anymore.
Yeah, but the problem is that you could just put him to the practice squad then.
He doesn't know. He doesn't even want to be in Chicago. He said he wants out of Chicago. Like Bears are refusing to play him. He said he doesn't want to be here. He's got another year in his contract next year. Just throw him out there for like a 4th round pick and be like, here you go. Here's your offensive lineman.
Yeah, but he's not that good.
Not this year. Not this year he wasn't, because I don't like this year he has the attitude that he doesn't want to be there. Last year he was ranked 13th among the offensive guards. Like he had a good year last year. This year it's just like he just doesn't want to be in Chicago anymore. And he's had that attitude since the preseason too. Like he refused to play in the preseason because he just doesn't want to be here.
And well, at least he's getting paid. So,
Yeah,
but
I
that's,
mean,
I mean,
so-
yeah, like I said, there's not going to be any
I guess
picking
the
up
biggest-
of offensive linemen.
the thing is they don't even have to be good offensive linemen to be better than what it is we've got.
You're saying that.
I mean,
You're saying that. I'm telling you. You think the grass is greener, even though you got brown grass? Let me tell you,
no,
not always the case.
we've got dirt. We've got dirt. So our starting tackles right now are either ranked dead last, 115 out of 115, or third to last, 113 of 115. Our offensive guard, like that's our two tackles. Then you go to our guards, and it's 95th of 95 and 93rd or 95th of 99 and then 93rd of 99. So like the bottom that's our starting line. Like it doesn't require a lot to be better than that.
There's only 100 guards in the NFL.
With the required amount of snaps, you know. So,
Okay.
But you know, when you look at those rankings, you have outside of your center some of the bottom 4 guys in the league. I mean,
They rank
Yeah.
though.
well yeah,
They
because
rank.
they got enough starts. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, are you going to get anybody good? No, probably not. You know, and then there's guys that are still floating around out there. Like, I wouldn't mind if Seattle gave a guy like DJ Fluker a call, right? Like, he's floating around out there. He's still in incredible shape. You know, why you don't bring him in for a tryout when you have the bottom 2 tackles in the league? Why don't you give a guy a call? Well, like, what's it take you to bring him in?
And
Right?
It doesn't hurt.
I mean, like, why we're not exploring some of these options? That's where
Well, you know what? I hear
Frustrating.
Jason Peters is available.
he was back. They actually brought him back. They had him for like 5 minutes, and then they're like,
Yeah, when you can't even make our squad, then you are really out.
That's what I'm saying. Like, so yeah, no, it's the offensive line situation is frustrating.
Well, luckily you don't have a quarterback that really is not very good either. So
Weirdly, he's somehow leading the league in yardage and stuff, though. I mean, he's one of the most pressured guys. That's why it's like, man, I bet he could probably actually be better if, you know, he wasn't running all the time.
well, hey, you know, there you have it. You know, and so maybe he's just got to be better under pressure.
Absolutely. I can see how that team meeting's going. So we're going to get you no help up front. So we really need your release to be as soon as you catch the ball. If you could just like hot potato, that would be awesome.
Well, it's like what's it in the replacements?
Yeah, scramble.
I'm going to need you to move fast, think even faster.
or like the one guy on the longest yard that was asking Adam Sandler, "Why can I play quarterback?" You're right. How will you throw the ball? Height. That's why. Now sit down and shut up.
Yep. Well, I mean, you know, I guess that's the one thing Gino can do. He can throw the ball. He just, you know, you got to give him more than 2 seconds.
So, and Michael Thomas isn't in Tampa. We're getting conflicting reports.
Okay.
He was. They said he was yesterday.
He's gone now.
Yeah, he just isn't there for a workout. I guess they're just having beers or something.
Hanging out with Rob Gronkowski on the yacht.
There
Hey,
you go.
That would be a fun trip.
I agree. I
That'd be a
think that
great
would be a
trip.
good time.
There would be so much ridiculousness on that boat,
I'd be game for that. Let's go.
right?
So,
Rob Gronkowski and Jason Kelsey together on a yacht would be a trip.
I think that they have conflicting personalities.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know that would really go great.
That would be like I can see that 100%. Like Jason just being like, you know what? Fuck you.
Throw him
Yeah.
overboard in the middle of the ocean. Oh well.
Yeah, I think he would just be like, yeah, you're kind of dumb, dude. Like, I don't.
We're just gonna push you overboard. Nyeh.
See how that works out for you. But I don't know. I mean, I guess it'll be interesting with these next couple of. No, there's too much money in the roller quarters.
Right. I realistically think though this could be one of the more active trade deadlines that we've seen in a while for the NFL. Just because you have a lot of teams that typically aren't in contention this early in contention right now. And then you have a lot of teams that are so badly injured at a lot of key positions that they might become desperate and be like, we need somebody just because of the injuries.
Yeah.
Or you could be like the Saints and have an open workout.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of awesome. I'm not mad at that at all.
Why was there no video footage of this to see how many people actually showed up for this open workout?
You know what? Somebody should have actually been there and just been like, we were full of shit.
I mean,
That wasn't put out by the Saints.
Yeah.
It's almost as bad as the Arizona State head coach on Saturday.
What do you do?
Yeah, but he was serious.
Yeah, so Arizona. I don't know I don't know if that was Arizona State's regular kicker or if their regular kicker got hurt. But whoever was kicking field goals for Arizona State on Saturday was so ungodly pathetic because
Well, they weren't kicking field goals, that's for sure.
these were 25-yard attempts that were missed before they even left his foot, and were ending about 25 yards away from the goalpost.
Oh yeah, no, they were so far wide, it was crazy.
And then after the game, the head coach was basically like, if you're a student at Arizona State and you can kick, please show up to practice on
he
Monday.
didn't limit it. He didn't limit it to students.
He just said if you live in the Arizona State area and you can kick, please show up to practice on Monday. We're having open tryouts for kicking. Our kicking game effing sucks. And then the reporter's like, were you just mad or were you being serious? Like, no, I'm serious. Our kicking game sucks and we need help. So if you can kick, please show up to practice on Monday.
Yeah, no, like that was Monday, right? It was just going to be like open kicking tryouts on Monday. And it wasn't limited to people at that school. It was literally, if you can drive to the stadium, you got a shot.
Damn, I can kick a 35-yarder.
Me too. Yeah,
I mean,
still.
I've seen some pretty bad kicks, but this wasn't like a 40-yard kick that like was just bad. These were 25-yard field goals that had literally no shot of going anywhere but in the crowd. Like they didn't even hit the net. They landed in the crowd without even hitting the net.
Yeah,
That's
for
awesome.
me, 40 yards is that's where I'm just clearing the crossbar. I was never a great kicker.
I see, and I've never tried it. Like it's only been like I've done it from 25 yards when you go to do the NFL experience. Like they give you like a 25-yard field goal, and I've always cleared it really well, like from there. So I assumed that I could go an extra 10 yards. I've never tried a 40-yard field goal.
Yeah,
you know, like just setting up on the 30 and trying to go for it and what have you. I think I'd have enough leg to do it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if how straight I would be. Like that's really where the kicker is.
I mean, you couldn't.
Anybody can kick a ball far within reason. You gotta have the leg strength to do it. But
sure,
you know, once it's not a matter of kicking it far; it's kicking it straight. as the guy from
Like,
Arizona State found out.
I can do that part of it. I don't have that booming kick. Like I don't have the mechanics for it. I was just never a kicker. Like for me, I'd throw the ball. So, I used to be able to hit 65. I think I can still, hit like 55, but yeah, so I can actually throw further than I can kick.
Yeah, I can believe that. I could definitely kick further than I can throw, but I'm not a punter. I can't punt the ball to save my life.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so it's if you think that just because you're a kicker you could punt, and because you're a punter you could kick, that's not really the case.
I'm a better punter than I am a better kicker.
See, I would be a better place kicker than a punter.
Yeah. So,
granted, I spent 0 time practicing either of those positions, so I would imagine that you get better over time.
Right. Anyways,
Uh,
and that brings us to the end of the show.
It sure does. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe. Helps us bring our content to you. If you're watching on my channel, that signature card up front, when we hit 500 subscribers, we're going to give that away to the people in the subscriber list. If you're watching on Roku, stay tuned for the next hour. Other than that, we'll see y'all tomorrow.
See ya.
Introducing National Streaming Sports, live and on-demand sports talk programming that you can access 24/7. For the premier sports talk experience, tap into our Roku channel. Start your mornings with Mac and Jack covering all the weekend sports action. Then pour a cup and enjoy all the sports you can drink on the Coffee and Sports podcast. At midday, talk sports from east to west on the Coast to Coast podcast. Followed at night by some hot girl talk with Prim and Proper Sports featuring Sonia Pearson. Talk boxing on the Gloved Fist. Yankee fans tune in for Start Spreading the News. And there's more on the College Sports Huddle and Sports Scope with Robert Butler. There are 20 podcasts in all and 70 weekly shows giving us a 3.4-star viewer rating. To find us on Roku TV, search for National Streaming Sports on the Roku search bar. Click on the logo and you're in. National Streaming Sports, live and